TIFU I'm a terrible parent. Today I gave my 4-year-old his first existential crisis. I did one of those age progression apps that aged me to age 70, and I showed it to my son not even thinking about the consequences of my actions. For a little backstory, we just moved in with my best friend who recently lost her grandma to old age. It was my son's first exposure to death and he is very matter-of-fact about it. When my friend or her boys talk about her, he will sometimes chime in with gems like, "Yeah, but she's dead." So he has asked all of the normal questions about death that 4-year-olds have, and I think he basically understands it. His response to this pic was not what I was expecting. He completely broke down and for almost an hour he just cried and wailed, "I don't want you to get old and die, mama, please don't get old and die, mama." He repeated it over and over, as if him saying it would somehow will me into existence forever. Nothing I could do or say could comfort him. He did this until he passed out. It was bedtime. I think for the first time he realized that I would die, and what that actually means. Did I traumatize my baby? I feel so stupid for showing him that picture. I should have known. TLDR, I showed my son an age-progressed picture and he proceeded to have a complete emotional breakdown. My folks are about 70, and yeah, please don't get old and die is sometimes my internal monologue. Perfectly reasonable thing to have an emotional breakdown about. He'll get distracted by something silly and fun. He's 4, but I think letting him process and be sad is fine. I distinctly remember going through a phase as a young kid realizing that one day everyone I know was going to be dead. I didn't eat very well for like a week. Not sure what snapped me out of it, probably conversations about how all of this was a long way off and I wouldn't need to worry about it until I was older than my parents were then. He's been alive 4 years, so that's one lifetime to him right now. Have him count by 4s, obviously with a lot of help on his fingers, how many of his lifetimes that is. Once he gets to his toes he should realize it's a long, long way to go. Add that to stories of people being active in their 90s and even older, especially if they talk about things they grew up with when they were young. Show how much changed in all that time. Also, don't let him get into geology, where a million years is gone in a blink. My dad was great for this. "Oh, sure, the sun will devour the earth one day, but you don't have to worry because we'll all be dead before then. I'll be dead, your mother will be dead, your pet will be dead. It's normal." Turns on a Nostradamus apocalypse prophecy show. Not bad parenting, this reaction is normal. I was coincidentally talking to my mom recently and asked her when I first learned about death. She mentioned that she explained to me that one day I would have to learn to take care of myself because my parents wouldn't be there one day, and I pretty much had the same reaction as your kid. The wild part is I had completely forgotten about this until she mentioned it. Growing up when I was a teenager and a young adult, I was terrified of death. Still am actually. But for some reason it never clicked in my brain that my mum would die. And then she did. And it fucking destroyed me. After reading this, I'm def gonna buy my mommy some dinner. Child, this is the worst moment of my life. Parent, you mean it's the worst moment of your life so far? Bottom line, the occasional existential crisis is good for the 4-year-old soul. Well, that sucks, but it made me giggle a little. I'm already going to hell, so don't worry. It's not that bad. I think teaching him about the circle of life is not that bad. He will recover. I had a similar experience with my daughter. I had to tell about the cycle of life-death. I basically told her that when I'll die, she'll be old too, most likely with a family and loving people around her to help her go through that, and even if it's sad, she'll be able to enjoy life with those who will still be there. When I went off this, my parents assured me that I was still young and that it would be a long time before any of us would die, and that helped me a little bit, but I just had to wrap my head around it eventually. As much as this sucks, it is something everybody needs to deal with on some level eventually, and all you can really do is comfort and validate the feelings of fear. I dare not give advice on how to manage or school them further on this because I'm not a parent, so I just wish you well. For what it's worth, my mother did a similar thing to that. She told me about the Queen and royal family, that if the Queen commanded you to join an army and fight, you had to do it. I had a meltdown for the rest of the day in tears over the thought a stranger could do that to me. By the next I completely forgot about the entire thing. Don't worry, you will scar them in many others ways too. I once turned up to work after school care where one of the 5-year-olds was bawling her eyes out because she did not want to live to 100 after one her friends told her she was going to live to 100. Like absolutely in hysterics for 30 minutes. Sometimes kids are just kids and not as mature as we may think they are for their age. Just keep that in perspective as well as the other good advice in this thread. It's like the movie Inside Out and your kid just got his first blue sphere. I was 4 when I had my first existential crisis too. For me it was the land before time. I think all children have this realization and it's extremely frightening. I remember crying myself to sleep because we're all gonna die and what's the point of anything even at a very young age, but my sister never seemed fazed by it. I still struggle with the concept today as an adult tbh. Don't worry, sugar plum, everyone dies. One day the sun will expand, consuming the entire planet. Night night, sweet dreams. I was 6 when my mom decided to do something nice for herself. So she shows up one night with a perm. 1983-ish as was the style at the time. Who was this stranger? Where was my mom? Who was this imposter? I think I cried for an hour straight. My mother was gone forever. Now there was this stranger in mom's place. Nothing would ever be the same. Lol, but by hour 2, I was completely over it. It was mom and I loved her and she loved me. Even with the funny haircut. Young kids just get weirded out by change, but we get over it easy enough. Life has hard, bad, sad parts to it, and a small child is going to learn about and experience those as they grow up. It's part of the process for every human. Doesn't make you a terrible parent to be there for that, quite the opposite, you're there to help them learn how to cope with those things. Teaching a child how to cope with sadness, pain, even boredom are the best things you can do for them. The moments each of my kids figured out mortality sent me into an existential crisis. Probably the only times I've wished I could live forever, for them. Anyway, you're not a terrible parent doesn't make it easier, but this would have happened regardless. We talked about death a few times with our kiddo. We talked about it at 4 and they had the same reaction basically, less crying, more hugging. At 8 now he understands that we aren't guaranteed tomorrow. We also used it as a gateway to why it's important to spend time with the grandparents even if we would obviously rather be doing our own thing. We typically give him the option to go or not go. If all else fails, turn to science. He can never be alone. He is made of you. Even if you can't be with him in person, you will be with him, forever. Yep. Think I might go see my mum this weekend. When my second child discovered what death was, it was weeks if not months of the occasional hysterical breakdown because she didn't want to die and she was afraid of her mom and I dying. So that was fun. Understand where you're coming from, op. Good luck. Your job is not to make your child happy 24/7, your job is to prepare him for life. In life, people die, and learning that and learning how to deal with it is a necessary component. I remember at that age, I had dreamed my parents were skeletons and I ran to their room to make sure they weren't bones. My dad said that it wouldn't happen for a long time. It worked, I guess, cause I was able to go back to bed. When my son was around 4 he cried himself to sleep because his older brother would go to college and leave him alone. Brother was 8 at the time. To be fair, I could see myself at 30 having a similar breakdown about the mortality of my mommy. My daughter's kindergarten class did this to them. She came home all excited to show me what she will look like when she's 100 years old. I had mixed feelings. If the thought of your death makes him break down like that, I don't think you're a terrible parent, lol. Your kid's just saying what we're all thinking on the inside. By having a kid you literally doomed a person to mortality, and by extension a lifetime of existentialism. At least it was in a natural context. He may be young, but what he learned is a hard truth he would have to learn eventually. Lol, my mom used to say she would die in the middle of the night if I didn't pick up my Legos, so I think you are doing okay. I gave one to mine, also 4 years old, reading him Hansel and Gretel, as the possibility of a mother being able to abandon her children in the forest has never occurred to him before. It's been 3 days and I still receive "Mom, you wouldn't abandon me, right?" C.K. Lewis has a great skit about teaching his daughter about the inevitable heart death of the universe. And also that ponies are assholes. Being 4 years old is basically an existential crisis. I would not worry too much. I mean, as I see it, parenting is a big chunk of "I think I broke my son and how you handle it," so yeah. Also, it seems like all of us go at some point over that realization about death and all of that, so to be honest you only speed up things. Be with him so he can process any feelings and check for depression signals. Seems like I was not the only one who at that point started eating on a precarious way, as well as isolating myself from the look for those, and any other weird behavior, and be with him to talk and help him discharge any thoughts he might have. GL. Or, "Honey, no, you didn't F you." This reaction of his was pretty normal for someone confronting the implications of what death really means for the first time, and it was going to happen before long one way or another. At some point he was gonna ask a question that totally innocuous to us, answer to which would have had a similar result. Kids are resilient, he'll be okay, and everybody has to learn about this stuff at some point. Life is a savage beast. Being 4 years old is a tough time, as you often have to stare down the barrel of what this crazy experience actually means. I don't think you FU'd, I think being 4 sucks, and he's probably just smart enough to have put 2 and 2 together. Consider yourself fortunate to have such a brilliant child. The purpose of human life, no matter who is controlling it, is to love whoever is around to be loved. Kurt Vonnegut. When you're a little one, your parents are your whole world. As you get older, your world gets bigger. If we are lucky enough to have our parents grow old, by then, we have others around to love and be loved by. Be it our own children, a partner or partners, or friends. There is no shortage of people in this world that need to be loved. Life, finds a way. Jeff Goldblum. Edit spelling. He'll be fine. He didn't have an emotional breakdown. He cried, he's 4, tomorrow he'll have completely forgotten your conversation and cry because the remote control is under the table where he threw it. Learning about life isn't a horrible trauma. This is normal. I was similarly sad when I was 5. Just tried to explain him that it will be a very long time until either of you get old and he will get used to it. I traumatized mine by talking about the sun engulfing the earth in millions of years. Lol. He would have figured it out sooner or later. I also remember when I freaked out about my parents growing old and dying. Let the kid be. Time is different for kids. The days are long, the years are longer. Soon, the thought of dying from old age will be a distant thought. It's not your job to shelter your child from life's harsh realities, it's your job to support them as they face those realities. You did a good thing, don't beat yourself up about it. There is a book you can buy to help explain death to your boy. It is called Lifetimes: The Beautiful Way to Explain Death to Children. Not sure if I can link to it here, but very easy to find. It is a very calm exposition to death and the naturalness inevitability of it. I bought it for my own kids, but I read it alone every now and then just as a memento mori. I hope you and your son find peace in this topic. I told my 5-year-old that eventually the sun would burn out, but before it did it would get really hot and destroy all life on the planet. I was just trying to teach him about science. He got scared and started crying, so of course I wanted to comfort him, and I explained that he won't have to worry about that because he would already have been dead way before that happened. Yeah, I just kept digging that hole deeper, so I inserted my foot in my mouth and tried to change the subject. My 4-year-old had a breakdown because I got him 2 cheesy roll-ups from Taco Bell instead of 3, even though he only ever eats 2. Please don't be too hard on yourself. Parenting is hard. The biggest fear is not the death of self but of loved ones.